Hey guys, welcome to CPL Fever. It's your host, JackMurray here, and today on another episode of Soccer Stories, Get Into the Journey, we are absolutely thrilled to have Canadian soccer icon, striker, the one and only Iain Hume. So how are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to this. Got me a bit nervous now, but starting off like that, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to interview you, like I said, so I can't wait to ask you some questions. And the first question that I have for you is, how did you fall in love with soccer?
Well, coming from a British background, it's kind of culture over there. So my dad, well, my whole family is Scottish born and bred. Moved over to Canada when I was a year and a half old, and you can't take me out of that mentality. With my dad was never a player; he played locally, but he had a love for the game and still has. And my brother and I, we were kind of not forced into it, but it was in our makeup right away. So that he put us both in. And funny enough, I didn't like it when I started, but I was only 3. Like I was 3 years old, so I didn't know what I liked. So yeah, I wanted to play baseball, which was a big no-no for my dad. It's like, no, you can sit the year out. So I think I was 3.5 when I first played, and I didn't take to soccer right away. And he's like, no, you can wait till next year. You're not playing baseball. Wait till next year. You can try soccer again. And this is no disrespect to baseball, to all you baseball fans out there. I am a Blue Jays fan, so I've grown into that sport. But yeah, as soon as I started playing at 4, I came back the next year, started playing at 4, and I fell in love with the game. And it's like I said, being from a British background, it's our makeup. It's like hockey in Canada for the most part. You just love the game. It's just one of those, you're born into loving the game. And that was the same with me and my brother. And my brother's 3 years older than me, so by the time I was able to compete a little bit with him, I just fell in love with it a bit more and more and more, and it just grew. And even to this day, I'm a bit of a soccer geek, and I watch everything. Like I've watched almost every game of the Euros when I've had the chance to, and it's just in my blood. It's something that I'll never ever shy away from. It's something I love.
Do you think having an older brother helped you develop as a player, because you always had someone that was kind of better than you until you got to a certain level?
Yeah, he wasn't better than me.
Okay. Well, I mean, when you're 4 or 5, I'm assuming maybe he could get it around you.
Oh yeah. No, but that's how I turned into the player I am. Is he was my training partner all the time, and I'd train with his team. Like I said, he's 3 years older than me, so I trained with his team. And when I got to that age, maybe 7. When I started playing rep soccer, when I think it was about 6.5, 7 when I started playing rep, but I was playing under 9s. So it was kind of one of those. I trained with him all the time, and that's why I became the type of person and player I am. Is I'm aggressive. I'm very sure of myself when I'm playing, and I make sure everyone knows I'm there. And that came with being beaten around by a 3-year older brother and his team, and training with them in practice, and like going up and the little kid that goes and collects all the balls, and I'm kicking it better than a bunch of the kids that are older than me. And he was probably my best training partner to this day. That's why, like, we're best friends. We work together. We're coaching together now, and it's I wouldn't have been where I was and where I've been if it wasn't for him when I was younger.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And my little brother is actually only 5, so there's a big age difference. But me and my little brother, we love to kick it around. We love to pass it to each other. We try and beat our passing record with him. And he's now starting to learn like how to pass it like with the inside of his foot and use his other foot, which Daddy actually taught me at like 4 years old, which I'm so grateful for, because now I can actually use both feet very well. So yeah.
Be careful, he's gonna come and get you. He's gonna, he's gonna try and be better than you. But it's great to hear about your wrong foot. That's something my dad taught me from a very young age. As soon as he found out I was right-footed, we used to do practice sessions where I wasn't allowed to use my right foot.
Wow.
So
okay.
in the basement, in the back garden, in the carport outside our house. He used to get me kicking the ball against the wall and not allowed to use my good foot, and that's why I can strike a ball the way I do with my left foot. I don't think twice about it. Whereas a lot of people who are one-footed, when it's on their wrong foot, they try and chop it back onto their good foot. And me, it's second nature, and I just kind of close my eyes and swing. But no, I've worked very, very hard, and it's good to hear that at a young age you're doing that, because it's something that is overlooked far too much by a lot of players.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting to hear about how he kind of made you like practice just with that foot, because obviously even when you're playing at the top level that you've been playing with internationally or over in England or wherever, you've probably been able to have an advantage because you know certain players really favor a certain foot.
Yeah, well that's it. And with me being short, I'm not the quickest. I was quick, but I wasn't rapid. I had to make sure that I had other things that people didn't have, and I'm very good in the air. Played a lot of basketball when I was in school when I was a kid, and I was very competitive and very, very good when I was in high school and everything. But that's another thing that helped me was jumping. I can outjump majority of people, left foot, right foot, and my physicality. Like I said with my brother, these are things that I had to make sure were on point, because I potentially was a little bit behind in other aspects of my game. Wasn't 100-meter sprinter, wasn't 6 foot. So, and I'm not the most skillful player. I'm skillful when it comes to my basics, and I know that I've got my basics on point, and that's something that I worked on so much as a kid, was my first touch, reading the game, and things that my dad and my brother worked on with me was to make sure that if I wasn't excelling past or beyond other players, that certain aspects of my game were fundamentally sound, and that was something that I worked on so hard.
Okay, and you mentioned reading the game. So did you watch a lot of soccer, and did that help you read the game? And if so, what were like some things that you watch for when you watch soccer? Like some tips from learning.
Well, I'm a striker. So if I watch games, especially when me and my brother started watching games, it was, I'd say we started watching properly is when used to be Soccer Saturday on TSN with Graham Leggett. And I'm going back late 80s, early 90s. It was on a Saturday and a Sunday, and they'd play all the Premier League games. And me and my brother and my dad would go to the pub, because it was the only place you could get them, where at least with an atmosphere. But we would sit there and we'd watch, like I'd watch strikers. So at that time was like your Andy Coles and Dwight Yorks and Robbie Fowlers and these guys, and you're watching them. And for me, I'd watch their movement, where they move in aspect to where the ball is. And I try and look, okay, listen, I'm never ever, and I never was as good as any of them. But if you can try and read and see mannerisms in the way their head's on a swivel all the time and they're looking around, it helps you. And it doesn't have to be Premier League, it could be any league, but watching people in your position or positions that you play, like I played out wide as well when I was younger, so watching that and how to make the game bigger and how to make the field bigger so you have a bigger picture. These are things that I what's the wording? I indirectly watched without just sitting there and staring at them. I made sure that was something in the game that I was paying attention to, and I think it was a great tool for me, because it's even a bigger tool for this generation, because you got so much soccer on so many channels from so many countries. We didn't have that back then. We had literally the Premier League, so we had to watch the Premier League at the time, and it was great for me. And like I said before, I'm a bit of a soccer geek, so I do enjoy watching. Even now, I do, because I'm moving into the different aspect of my career as a coach. Is I'm still trying to learn all the time, and I'm watching games and I'm watching formations and positioning of players and how the better teams do well with the formation, then you possibly watch a lesser team and see them in the same formation, and how do they counteract the bigger teams when they play in that. So I'm still constantly learning, and I think that's something that people need to remember, is nobody knows everything about the game. Nobody does. You may think you do, and you may think you know an awful lot, which you do, but you don't know everything, so there's always a chance to learn at all times.
I have a question. Do you think that, I mean, obviously Canadian soccer is, getting better now, but do you think one of the reasons that Canada is kind of behind a lot of these other countries, or was, more recently, do you think that's because soccer wasn't a part of the culture and the kids growing up weren't able to, or it wasn't in the culture to watch a lot of soccer, so they didn't kind of absorb the nuances, as opposed to just being, maybe the coaching wasn't there?
I think it doesn't help that it wasn't a part of the culture. You had a lot, like it's still, I think it's maybe proven wrong by somebody out there, but last I seen, it was probably 2 or 3 times more played by kids up, I think from 5 till 19, I think it is. Almost 3 times more than any other sport in Canada. So it's not like we don't play the game. I think there's just something's been there where we didn't have especially when I came through, we didn't have any avenues. So through my generation, the generation before, we didn't have TFC. We had Toronto Lynx. We didn't have Montreal Impact in the MLS. We had Montreal Impact playing in the A-League. We didn't have CPL. We didn't have, our only avenues were you take a risk and go abroad, or you wait till you're 18 and go to university down in the States. So we didn't have that. Myself, Julian de Guzman, Tiba Hutchinson, Dwayne De Rosario, we didn't have those avenues at the time. And we took the chance. And okay, Dwayne stayed over here. He played for Rochester and the Lynx and everything. So he forged his own path, and he was kind of a trendsetter in that way, because he moved down to San Jose and then did so well in the MLS. But other players who didn't wait it out, I went on my first trials when I was 13. So I was already set in my mind where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do at 13 years old, which was far beyond a lot of people. Not saying I was better than them, but I already had that mindset of, once I got my first trial, that was my pathway. And I didn't want to wait till I was 18 to go to university. I didn't want to finish. And then, to my detriment now, and still to this day at 37 years old, I didn't finish my high school, which is something I really, really wish I did. But in hindsight, I played nearly 600 games and played all over the world. So I did what I loved to do and I dreamed of doing from such a young age. I'd done that for 20 plus years. So it kind of weighs itself out, and still look back and I might go back and finish my high school. But at the moment, I'm just enjoying it. And I think Canadian soccer now, with the avenues that are available to kids, from all ages, through your especially in Ontario, your OPDL, you've got your I think it's Ontario Provincial Development League or something like that. I'm still trying to get up with the lingo of the Canadian soccer program, the Ontario soccer program, but it's avenues that weren't there. They've got paid coaches, qualified coaches, whereas a lot of places are still on volunteer coaches. So at what point where does your expectation level go to, and when does it start to get to that level? Is if you're playing for an under 7 team here in Ontario and you got a paid coach, the likelihood is your development's going to go on a little bit quicker. So it's something we never had, and I think now that it's going there, you're seeing the fruits of it, because you've got your kids coming through. Like, look at our Fonzo Davies and Jonathan David and Theo Corbianu and Luke Cavallini, and you got all these kids coming through, and they're very, very, very good. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying they're 100 miles better than some of the kids that maybe came through the system back then, but they got the opportunities earlier, they got into the right places earlier, and they've excelled a lot quicker, which I think is something that is great. And it's a great time to become a Canadian soccer fan and a Canadian soccer player because you have so many pathways available to you.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that with all these like great players that, like you said, coming through, and like yourself, Atiba Hutchison, and all these amazing players, they've kind of like helped set the pathway for Canadian soccer players. Whether if you want to play abroad, like in Europe, or if you want to like try even in the CPL now, and it's so great that the CPL is here because you can go to the CPL. You can make the jump up to like the MLS, or you can even go like abroad and try and play in Europe. There are so many options for Canadian players, and I think like that even these big clubs are starting to see that. Like Atletico Madrid just invested in a club for the Canadian Premier League, and Atletico Madrid is one of the biggest clubs in the world. They just won La Liga.
Yeah, like I was very fortunate, and I played for a sister club of Atletico Madrid in India. So I know where they went and did their preseason. It's an incredible facility. So they went there. They were out there for 2.5 months. And I spent a month out there a couple of years ago, or twice, 2 years. I spent a month out there for preseasons, and it's an incredible facility, and it's great for them to have that. And I won't be surprised if you see other big clubs in the future coming in and investing, and possibly part owning or whatever in the same vein as Atletico Madrid. But that's it. Like the CPL it's just another avenue that's now there because you already had your Ottawa Fury up until they disbanded, and you had your TFC, TFC2, your TFC academies, and it's something that Canada's needed for a very, very long time. And there was always question marks about why we weren't competing and why we weren't developing. And we had a pool of players that was maybe, and realistically 20 deep, 25 deep for the men's national team, who you could actually look at and say, this guy's a first-team player, he belongs in the Canadian squad. Now they have maybe 40 or 50, if not more. And I think it's incredible. It's incredible. The CPL as well, like you said, is it's a lot of homegrown talent. I would have loved to have played there. I'm not going to be sour grapes or anything like that on this, but I would have loved to have played there to finish my career. The opportunity never came up. But you've got a lot of kids coming out and they're learning. It's not quite on the level of where they were hoping it would be yet, but it's getting better and better. And it's great to have that again, another pathway. And something local. You can play for your local team. Like how many guys are from especially in Ontario, from the Toronto and York area that are playing for York, and then you've got your Burlington, Hamilton area that are playing for Forge, and I think it's incredible that they've got that. And we just hopefully we'll get the fans out a bit more because you don't have to travel into Toronto to go watch TFC. You haven't got to go into the city to watch your Whitecaps over there. Go and watch Pacific, and it's incredible. And you guys out there, it's incredible one for you to go out and watch Halifax. I'll tell you this now, I was very close to signing for them 2 years ago. Long conversations with Stephen about it, and nearly happened, and it fell through at the last minute, and I was devastated because I'd had my family set on coming over. We'd been looking around at where we'd live and all that, and it would have been an incredible one for me to finish my career playing in Canada. And I've never been to Halifax, so it would have been incredible for me. I hear so much about your seafood and your lobster and all that, and it's something I'm a massive seafood eater, so I was really, really looking forward to it, to be honest. But unfortunately, it fell through, and that was the first CPL. So that looks a bit. I'm a little bit long in the tooth now for the league. So it's hey, never know. I might come out there at some point. Steven's still there. Steven's still tearing things up and doing so well. So who knows? I might be able to help him out in the future in some capacity.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And when you said that you almost signed for them, I was like, I could not believe that because I never heard about anything like of that sort. So it was super cool that almost happened. And speaking of seafood, yeah, the seafood here is amazing. You should definitely come and try it.
I will. I'll hold. I'm gonna hold you there. I'm gonna trust you on that. I'm gonna travel out there some point once things clear up as far as travel goes. I'll have to come out because I wanna. Obviously, I want to see the setup out there. I wanna try and visit a lot of the clubs around the country and try and see where they're at as far as training goes. And I know Rob Gale and I know Jimmy Brennan and obviously Stephen Hart. And it'd be good to have a look in at things around the country because, unfortunately, as much as I've spent time in Canada when I was growing up and traveling around with the national team, I've not really visited a lot of places. It's a crazy one. You don't get a chance to. So, although I'm Canadian international footballer, been around, played in majority of places, there's a lot of places I still haven't been and been able to see. And I keep getting told there's some of the most beautiful places in Canada. So, I will make that a part of my bucket list over the next couple of years.
Nice. So you're still setting goals. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I've got to, man. I've got to. I'm Canadian, and I live in probably the most beautiful country in the world, and I've not seen half of it. So,
Yeah.
got to make an effort to do that.
Well, I have a question. I mean, there's been some, most of the CPL kind of has geared towards younger teams, but certainly, they've had some players like Marcel de Jong, who's had a lot of experience. What is one of the advantages that someone with your level of experience could bring to those players in the CPL, where a lot of them, that's their first, rodeo as a professional soccer player?
I spoke about this after I watched the first CPL season. It was crying, and I wasn't talking about it, like I said before, I was sour grapes about not having me there and whatever. It needed experience. It needed people who could teach players, and this is no disrespect, not questioning their ability,
right?
But their experience in how to manage a game, how to playing at home, how like watching Halifax, and Stephen will be the first one to say the guys needed to learn, and they'd play at home and they'd absolutely kill a team, win 3-0 and 70% possession, and then they'd go away and try and do the exact same thing and lose 2-0 or 3-0. Because you're away from home, learning how to manage a game and manage a situation and an atmosphere, it doesn't work the same. Not every game is the exact same, and I think a lot of them, especially the first year and the second year, wasn't so challenging because they were all in the same place, so it was kind of doing the bubble and whatnot. But when they were traveling in the first CPL, I thought you could see the inexperience. And that's, again, it's not any disrespect. It's natural when you're playing 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds who've never played a professional game in their career.
Right.
So that's them wetting their toes, and it's kind of like they needed that experience. And lo and behold, you see the two teams that have dominated for the most part of the two CPL seasons are players with a bit of experience in them. With your cavalry, with your Forge. You had Forge with Dave Edgar, Kyle Becker, two very experienced international footballers.
Right.
Leadership. You had Nick Ledgerwood with Cavalry and Marcus Haber the second season with Cavalry. And I just thought it was evident who could manage games a little bit better and who was more consistent with their performances. They wouldn't be very high and very low. They'd be very high and then maybe come down to like a mid-level performance, and they'd scrap out a point or a 1-0 win. And that was evident for me over the two seasons, especially the first one. I think the first one was standout. And it's something, again, that's down to the league and bringing in players who have experience but don't understand the game in Canada. It's a tough one. But it's getting there. I was a part of the Indian League where it was first year and second year and third year, fourth year, fifth year, and you see it grow exponentially every year. Like it was growing every single year, and I think it was even to now. I think it's going into its 8th year, and it still has teething problems. Everywhere is going to have teething problems. CPL is going to be the exact same. But I think the only way you're going to get in players of that experience and of that level that you want is more investment. Sponsors from TV. OneSoccer is doing an incredible job. Again, there's still ways to work around that and to improve it, but your big sponsors need to come in. They need to help the clubs out, and it's something that's going to happen. The MLS wasn't as big as it was right from day one. It had to grow, and they've grown for what, 25 years, 27 years, something like that, or 30 years, I think it is. So there's definitely ways to improve, but it'll get there, and we just need to make sure that it's continuing to churn out these players. Like you said, MLS, Europe, after playing in the CPL is a distinct possibility. So like Tristan Borges went over there. There's a Joel Waterman went to Montreal. You got these players who are getting these opportunities, so there's no reason why it can't grow.
Yeah, and Emilio Estevez went to ADO Den Haag, which is a pretty big accomplishment for the CPL, and that was in its first year. So it's encouraging, very encouraging to see the CPL doing well, and hopefully it'll do better and better and better.
Oh, will do. Keep the faith.
Yeah.
Will do.
So you said that the Indian Super League, you actually were there for the first year, like when it started? Okay. How did that story come about? And, was there any hesitation on your part to like go to a country like India that's more known for cricket, and you're there for the start of the season? There must have been a huge amount of unknowns going into that.
Oh, massively. It was one of those though, because it was the first time in my career I was out of contract. So from moving over in '99 to 2014, 2015, I'd never been out of contract. So it was the first time I've been out of contract, and I was actually doing a random interview with a buddy who was doing a freelance for TSN, and it was about Leicester, because Leicester just got promoted to the Premier League, and I obviously played 3 years at Leicester, so he thought who better to talk to than the Canadian player who played for Leicester. So he comes in, we had a good hour and a half, 2 hour conversation, did the interview and whatnot, and then at the end of it, he just asked me if I knew about the league, and I hadn't. I hadn't heard a thing about it, and he said, okay, well, gave me a guy's number. He goes, fire this guy a message and see what he thinks. And so I went home, spoke to the wife, spoke to my agent. He sent out an email, and it was essentially just an adventure. The season only went from September to December, so it wasn't like I was going to be away for a massive amount of time, and it wasn't cash driven. A lot of people think I went out there and it was great to go out, it's easy, you get paid a lot of money. Didn't get paid a lot of money. I got paid enough money to cover my overhead. That was it. And went out there and just buzzed off it, enjoyed it, and I got drafted in. So all your foreign players, all your Indian players were in separate drafts, and literally had no idea where I was going. Threw my name into a hat and woke up one day with about 50 emails and texts off the league and the owner of the club and the director of football from the club, and introducing himself, and it was surreal. It was something that was very, very college basketball, hockey type thing, where you're getting drafted in the league, and very Americanized, which was weird for me. After being in the UK system where you get transferred or signed, you don't get drafted in.
Right.
So it was very North American sports, which was kind of funny. But yeah, it just came from that, and I was just very fortunate. I landed into a relatively British setup, so it kind of went in, and it was a good go. It was a good season, and I just for the adventure alone, it was mad, and just enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's cool. And I was going to ask you, do you see any similarities? Do you see any similarities to Indian soccer and like Canadian soccer in terms of development or anything else, just soccer-wise?
Canadian, and I'll be honest, and this is no detriment or disrespect to the Indian Football League, is Canadian infrastructure is far more advanced. It always has been. We've been playing the game in Canada for a very, very long time. I'm just really looking. Well, I've been playing it here for 35 years almost. You've easily got to be going for 60, 70, 80 years where they've had developed leagues or actual like an infrastructure where you had house leagues and rep leagues and whatnot. So they've not. They don't have a lot of youth leagues, or didn't have a lot of youth leagues. They're trying to develop them now with academies and whatnot. But that's where your investment comes in. You've got some teams that are getting invested from Europe into India. So, and the thing is with the ISL, it's a spectacle. That's what they're about. They're about spectacles, and so you go to the games, you have your fireworks, you used to have your cheerleaders and all that, and they make a big
Oh,
deal of
really?
everything. Yeah, like they make a big
So it's
deal.
got a little bit of that, like when they used to have that roller derby on TV, or like kind of like a little bit of a, I don't want to say WWF, but like a little bit of extra entertainment flair.
Yeah, because they need to sell it. Like, because especially with it not being their main sport, you have some states in India which are very, very much in love with the game. But you also have there's 1.4 billion people. So you'd probably be saying 75% of them are cricket fans over football, whereas I'm willing to bet all of them are cricket fans, but over football, you've probably got 75% of them, if not more. So you've got to try and sell this to somebody who's interested, but it's not their first love.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of, okay, well, you're coming to watch a game, you're going to have the owner of the league comes out, or the first year especially, the owner of the league came to almost every game. So she would walk on the pitch, and they'd do the introductions, and you'd get fireworks before the game and big lead-ups to the games, and they make a spectacle of it. And I think that's something that it got everybody on board as far as the fan base, who weren't quite football fans yet. So it got them on board, and they're like, oh, well, I want to watch this. And then you bring in people and players who will get bums in seats, like your Del Pieros. And over the first 2 seasons, we had Del Piero, we had Materazzi, Elano, Trezeguet, Anelka, Ljungberg, Maluda, Nesta, Capdevilla, Luis Garcia. You had all these big names who came and played. Robert Pires.
Okay.
Had all these names who came and played, and it was like, oh, I love that guy. So he won the World Cup, so I'm going to go watch him. Or he won this, I'm going to go. So got bums in seats, and certain states needed that more than others. Like Kerala, where I played my first year, would get 60, 65, 70,000 every week.
Wow.
So they were there anyways because they loved the game. Goa, a little bit further up the west coast, was the same. They'd get 25, 30,000 filled their stadium because they love the sport. Whereas your Delhis and Mumbais and certain other places, you'd struggle to get them in. So you had to have somebody there who was going to draw them in. And it worked. Obviously, the pandemic has put a massive halt on that because of going into bubbles and not having fans. And it's the same as it was over here for the bubble last year for CPL. It's hard to get people to buy into watching it on TV. Question marks, especially in like CPL, trying to get people to buy into watching it on OneSoccer because they think they have to pay for it. It's wrong, but you still pay for TSN to go and watch curling and cornhole and roller derbies. Like nothing's free. Like you've never watched. Well, you've never watched a TSN, and this is no hit at TSN and Sportsnet and CTV and all that. You've never watched any of them for free.
Right.
Let's be honest, you had to pay for it. So OneSoccer's making sure that everyone can watch every CPL game, every Canada game. And this isn't me advertising for OneSoccer. I think I understand the question mark about paying for things, but nothing's free ever. So if you're in love with the game and you want to watch Canadian soccer grow, OneSoccer's the way to do it because they're going to have the pathway and the avenue there for you to watch it every single game. So you can't argue about it if it's giving you the product that you're after.
Yeah, and I personally really enjoyed OneSoccer. I've loved watching you on OneSoccer, and I think it's great that they're playing like every Canadian Premier League game, like all the Canadian games. But how did you get involved with OneSoccer, and how are you enjoying it so far?
I'm really enjoying it. I love being in studio when I went in for the last couple games, and for the the Olympic qualifiers. I was doing it from home, and then I was going in for the World Cup qualifiers in studio, and it all just came from. I've known Kurt Larson for quite a while when he was working with the Toronto Sun, and I was playing in the national team, so he would do all his pieces for it, and it came. It was a random meeting. Honestly, I was at the World Football Forum in Paris, so I just finished the season in India, and I got Player of the Season for India, and they were trying to advertise the league and trying to get somebody involved in the World Football Forum because such a fledgling league. They had a panel at the World Football Forum, and they asked me to be a part of it because I was obviously based in the UK, and rather than paying somebody massive amounts of money to come over and just be a face of it, they spoke to me. I just won their Player of the Year, so I went out to. It was when the World Cup was on. So when France won the World Cup, I was in Paris, just conveniently enough. And so the World Football Forum was on. I flew out there with my agent because he was a part of the panel as well. And I posted something on social media about on the streets of Paris, France. I think France had just beat memories gone, but they just won a game, and I just tweeted a message about it, and Kurt Larson's like, "Whereabouts are you?" I said, "I'm on this road." He goes, "I'm like half a mile away." He was literally on the same road, so he was doing something there. So he was literally on the same road. So we're like, "Okay, well, we'll meet up." So we went up, met up, had a beer, had a chat, and this is before OneSoccer and CPL was like a thing.
Right.
So just being in touch with Kurt, and all of a sudden he gets the gig with OneSoccer and with Media Pro, and they sorted it all out. And Kurt got in touch and asked me my interests, if I'm interested in doing it when I move back over here. And that's it. It's hopefully I'll have a bit more involvement, especially with all these new qualifiers coming up. Hopefully get in studio a little bit more and be able to be a bit more hands-on with what's going on with the national team, and obviously CPL as well if they'll have me. So it's something I enjoy doing, because I did it when I did my cruciate ligament when I was out in India. I was doing some TV work out there as well because I couldn't play. So I was training when I'd played for FC Pune in India, which is like 3 hours away from Mumbai, where their head office is and where the studios are. So I would train in the day, finish at about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and get picked up by a driver, and he'd drive me up to Mumbai, do the show, and if I was in training the next day, he'd drive me straight back down. If I wasn't, I'd stay in a hotel and do another day and then come back down. So it's something I've done before, doing the TV work, and really enjoyed it. Learned a lot. So if that's another avenue for me to stay in the game and be involved in the game over here, I think it's something that I'll jump at, because I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed hearing you talk, because you have so much knowledge about soccer, and I've really enjoyed hearing you talk about the national team and the CPL before, and even now, you're sharing so much knowledge, and I love hearing you talk about soccer because you know so much about it. But I had a question for you regarding the CPL and the national team. So is there a certain player that you like to watch on the national team or in the CPL, or a couple that really catch your eye?
It's easy for me to say the CPL or the national team. You got your Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Lairn. Kyle Lairn, he's a Brampton boy, so he grew up where I grew up with Thibaut Hutchinson, and there's a lot of Brampton guys, which is great. But it's easy for me to say that watching the national team. I enjoy watching them on the whole. I just the way they approach the game and the confidence they play with, and they've got a kind of no fear attitude, which is great. So I can't just say I want to watch one player apart from Alphonso Davies, because he just does what he wants, and the guy's incredible.
He's having fun, eh? Playing?
Oh, he's got to, man. Look at him. The guy's a phenom.
Move him up from left back at Bayern, and he's just okay. Well, I'll try some stuff out.
Yeah, like that's it, and he's just so fun to watch, and a lot of them
Yeah.
are, and it's a great time, like I said before, to be a Canadian soccer fan. Um, but I'll revert back to the CPL. Obviously, when Marcel de Jong was there, I enjoy watching him because he's my old buddy and my old teammate. Nick Ledgerwood's, it's great to see him still going and leading Calvary. Dave Edgar unfortunately retired, but he won 2 trophies with Forge, so I'll let him off. Kyle Becker's a joy to watch. He's been a standout for 2 seasons. I like Bustos, good little player, good friend of mine. I like watching him play. I think on a whole, I just enjoy watching the league, and they're still learning. But these experienced players and these players have been around. I think they'll definitely help. And Tristan Borges coming back is going to be good. It's going to be an important one. Yes, I think I also like, even though he didn't have a fantastic season last year, I like watching Kevin Ailman. He's a tidy little footballer who broke into the national team a couple of years ago, but never really hung around because he was down playing in, I think, like Costa Rica, and he was doing really well down there, but never really got many more opportunities with the national team. Now, him and Marco Bustos are very, very similar, so I like watching them, and yeah, I think they'll have big seasons this year. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. With so many players, like so much homegrown talent, and so many exciting players watching the CPL, you just get more excited to watch the CPL each season.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go away from it. It's Hakeem Garcia, isn't it? The boy at Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good player. I'll give it to him. He's a very good player, and I enjoy watching him. You never know what's going to happen with him, and he's banged some great goals. So he's another one I'm looking forward to seeing again.
Yeah. So speaking of Hakeem, Hakeem is also a smaller striker. So like you are. What's one advantage you have as a smaller striker? Because on the one hand you have like the really tall like Zlatan type. So what's the advantage of being a smaller striker? Because obviously you were have been signed by a lot of teams where you kind of came in and were that important striker and really called to put the ball in the net.
I don't know if there's any massive advantages. I think sometimes you're very underestimated as far as your aerial ability, your quickness. You kind of get brushed aside. People think, oh, he's a little guy, I'll take him, and you kind of catch them off guard. Like I did that quite a lot. People, again, going back to with me, everyone thought I was small, you'd beat me in the air, and I beat you in the air because I work so much on timing of my jumps, and obviously leaping ability. I worked on a lot, my jumping ability when I was a kid. So I got underestimated a lot. I wasn't quick, but I wasn't slow, so I'd always be in your face and I'd always be around, and you just become a pest. And that, I know Akeem might be a little bit different to the player that I am, but when I was playing, I made sure I left the mark. I made sure you knew I was playing against you. Even if you beat me, you knew after 90 minutes you'd earned that. But that's it, and it's something that you have to do is you make sure that your 90 minutes or your 75 minutes or however long you're on the field is something that the player you're up against remembers, because you don't want to be looked at as a pushover and an easy opponent. And by no means be dirty, by no means be nasty and play like that against people, but you have to have that little bit of a bite to your game and make sure, like being short, it's not something that is always looked at as being a positive thing. So it's not an attribute that coaches look at and go, oh, he's 5'7", I'm going to sign him. They don't. They'll say, oh, he's 5'7", but oh, have you seen the way he runs? See his work ethic? Have you seen that? So for the things that we lack in stature and in natural abilities and natural attributes, you have to make up for in heart and work and something special. And I'd bang a couple decent goals at a season, and then I'd make sure I add another 10 or 12 to that, and also run as much, if not more, than anybody else on the field, and you get a smile on the face of the coach, and that's what it was after.
Well,
Okay.
Stephen Hart, Stephen Hart, when we interviewed him, one of the things that he said, he actually brought up your name as someone that, when he was coaching the national team, the question was related to making a substitution and someone that could make an impact. And he mentioned you as someone that he, like, of all the players he'd worked with, something needs to change in the game, he'd bring you in, because I guess you bring that tenacity, that work ethic, and just kind of shake up the game. So what was that like?
Well, it was listen, I love Stephen, and it's a crazy one, because if you'd have looked, the amount of times I sat on the bench for Stephen, it hurt. Looking back at it, it hurt. And this is nothing against Stephen. It's just I want to play all the time. Having him say that and watching him say, I watched your piece with him. Having seen him say that, it let me understand it a little bit more. Because I was different to Tosin Ricketts, to Simeon Jackson, to Lucas Cavallini, to these guys. I was different. Lucas Cavallini is very similar to how I play, actually. He's physical, he's aggressive, he likes to run around and make sure he leaves a mark. Whereas Tosin Ricketts and Simeon Jackson are complete opposites to me. They're a lot more pace-driven, they're a lot more get down the channels and all that. I'll do that, but I don't do it to the same level as them, as far as natural pace. But again, they also don't have the attributes that I have, where I'll run through a brick wall for you and come out covered in bruises and blood, and it doesn't bother me. Whereas they're the opposite. And as much as well, that's it. That was what my upbringing is. I'm a winner. I have to win. I have to, whether it's practice, whether it's shooting session, whether it's head tennis, whether it's anything, I have to win. And my kids have learned that. My daughters have learned that. Video games, whatever, it's I'll try and win at all costs. And I'm not a horrible person for that. And I'm not a horrible father for that, but it's just the way I am. It's been something that's in my makeup. And as much as I'd have loved to have played a lot more, and it always upsets me to this day that I didn't play a lot more for my country, is hearing Stephen say that, it kind of gave me a little bit more understanding. Frustration came in quite a lot, and that Honduras game that we'd spoke about, and that has been publicized over the last couple of days, being 9 years past, that haunts me to this day. But I know I came on, and as bad as the performance was as a whole, I know I came on and I gave my heart, my all. So I know it was a little bit late in the day, but I came away with that, with my head a little bit high, not obviously nose to the roof type of high, because we just been hammered 8-1, but I walked away from that knowing I gave everything. And unfortunately, I think there was a lot of heads that were gone after that, and a lot of us were overlooked after that with the national team. And I was talking to Atiba Hutchinson about it the other day, and I only played, I think, 4 more games after that game. So for anyone to say we weren't, not exiled, but looked past after that game, which I brought up on social media last week when I commented on it after Stephen had put his documentary on, the mini documentary on OneSoccer. A lot of us were looked past after that. We were deemed as not good enough, which was frustrating for me, because I did nothing but give my best, and a lot of the guys were the same, did nothing but give their best for the country. But for some reason, the next cycle of coaches and players and that came in, we were overlooked, and then that one hurt harder than everything else, to be honest.
Well, do you think that the media has too much of kind of an influence, or they're able to influence, kind of put pressure on the coach to kind of look at that next group of players?
But it's crazy, because I was 28. I wasn't there, but that's it. Like we had a lot of players like Ante Jazic, Kevin McKenna, Lars Hirschfeld. They were towards the end of their careers anyways. They knew that was their last cycle. But you look at Tiba Hutchinson. Tiba's 9 months older than me. and he's still in the system. I'm not saying I belong in the system now. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that in the slightest. But I've played 4 games in 9 years.
Yeah.
Like, come on. That frustrated the heck out of me, and I lost a lot of faith in the political side of the game, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know why a lot of us were kind of pushed to the side. But it is what it is. It's football, and I've still never had an explanation. I've still never had a goodbye. I've never had oh, listen, Hume, you're on the outskirts, maybe come in for one. We never had anything like that. So 25 years of my life to the Canadian system, to go out the way I did frustrated me quite a lot. And I've spoke to numerous players of my own age and whatnot who was in the same boat. So it's kind of across the board thing, and I don't know where it all came from. But the media did have a lot to say about it, especially the media that didn't have a lot to say about soccer until it's the big trophies, until it's your World Cup. But that's unfortunately the thing is, soccer's a second thought when it's not a World Cup or a Euros to majority of people, unfortunately. And that's where we need to change it. That's where the governing bodies and the Canadian Soccer Association and your provincial associations need to change the narrative about soccer, because it's the biggest sport in the world. It's the most supported sport in the world. Let's make it that. Okay, Canada's got bigger sports in their minds, but it's not. Let's be honest. You have ice hockey, you have basketball, you have baseball. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have soccer. You know what I mean? So it's something that needs to be, the narrative needs to be changed on that. They probably did have a lot to say about our massive failure 9 years ago.
Yeah, and I think if a lot of media don't watch the game and they don't really I'm not saying that a lot of media that don't cover soccer don't know a lot about soccer, but they don't know all the tactics and stuff and the little changes that the coaches do. And if you're not looking at it, concentrating, the score can be misleading. Like the Euro Cup, North Macedonia lost to Austria 3-1. It was 26th place to 62nd, I think, or something like that, North Macedonia. And for most of the game, North Macedonia was really was really the better team. But the way the media look at it, if they didn't watch the whole game or they didn't pay a lot of attention, they're going to think, oh yeah, Austria won that pretty easily. But the truth is they didn't.
Scotland, Czech Republic. Scotland had 5-6 really good chances, should have scored. Czech Republic had 2 and scored. So, and one of them was a worldie. And then you've got the Portuguese game, and this is not a hit at Portugal, but they weren't good. Ronaldo was having a bad game, scored 2, and all of a sudden he's a world beater. So it's well, that's the narrative. That's the narrative. Is Ronaldo is, to a lot of people, the GOAT. Him and Messi, the 2 GOATs. I'm a Messi fan personally, but Ronaldo is Ronaldo. He scores goals, but for 85 minutes he was having a nightmare. He wasn't involved. He was walking around. He was complaining about misplaced passes to him, and then scores 2, and all of a sudden it's the Ronaldo show, and it wasn't. So the narrative is, when press sees that, they see 2 or 3-0 Portugal. They see 2 goals from Ronaldo. Incredible Ronaldo. No, it wasn't. Watch the game. But unfortunately, and this is the way of the world in every aspect of life, in every sport, is the dollar signs rule the world. And if they don't think they're going to get people viewing, it's a waste of money. So we'll get the big sports in, we'll get the big tournaments in, so we know we're going to have people watching. So unfortunately, that's the way it is.
I loved watching Hungary in that game for the first 80 minutes. Just the way they were doing tackles, and they were slide tackling, and the guy was keeping the ball at his feet and getting up quick. I mean, that was just inspiring to watch.
Yeah, and that's the major tournaments. You've always got an upset. You've always got an underdog who's going to come and put in performances, whether they win or lose. North Macedonia, again today.
Mm-hmm.
They played well, and it's okay. They didn't win again. They got beat, but you always get these smaller nations who they're no pushovers, and people. It's the same as in CONCACAF. You're going to play your El Salvadors. You're going to play your Nicaraguas and your Haitis and Surinams and this, and they're no pushovers. But people seem to think, oh well, it's Suriname. They're nobody's. Canada's playing Suriname. We don't need to see that. Well, you kind of do, because it's the ladder for us to qualify. So you earn your right to qualify, and the boys have earned their right. This is reverting back to the national team. Is they go down to Haiti in the team that they lost to in the Gold Cup the last time they played against them. So there's obviously there's going to be an element of fear there. There's going to be an element of, oh, if it happens again, or do they flip that completely and say, you know what, we're going to go down there and we're going to beat them. We're going to make sure we beat them. And they did that. But there was probably not as many people watching the game as there should have been, because it's a lowly game against Haiti. But that's where your non-football lovers, that's where they don't see the bigger picture. And how do you generate a fan base? You get people watching on mainstream television, on your OneSoccers. You get people watching from the ground up. And if they're watching from the ground up and they go and see that 12-0 win against the Cayman Islands, they go see this against Aruba, and they go and watch Haiti, you generate that fan base. You generate that winning mentality as a fan. And when you get to those bigger games, there's that hope and there's that kind of an expectation, which this generation needs, is no longer having the expectation of losing. Or you're going to lose to Costa Rica. Well, why? Because we're Canada? No, that's not right. We're Canada. We have a new generation. We're going to go win. So you want that to be generated fan base. And unfortunately, up until the last couple months, it's not been there. And that's where we need to get. Now we're in the Oct. Why not? Got nothing to lose.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is, I'm kind of jumping back to something that you said a bit earlier, but you mentioned the Euro Cup, and we've talked about it a little bit. But who are your favorites to win? Who is your underdog, and who are you cheering for?
Well, I'll always cheer for Scotland. So I'll tell you that now. I'll cheer for Scotland. Yeah. But in the same breath, which comes down to a lot of people divided opinions on this, is I'll cheer for England as well. I spent 21 years of my life in England. So my wife and my kids are both from England. So I've spent the majority of my life and the vast percentage of my life in England. So I'll always support them. Again, I'm born in Scotland. So this is where I get the divided reactions from family members. How can you support England, support Scotland? Well, that's me. I think an outsider has to be England. Because of the players they've got. They've got one of the deepest squads. But again, having watched Italy are so impressive right now. I know they've not come up against one of the big guns yet, so that'll be an interesting one. But my favourites, as I stated a couple of times, my two favourites are France and Belgium. I think their squads and their stars are exactly that. They're stars. So I'd love to see France do the double. It'd be great to see them be world and European champions. But it's the Euros. It's a tournament. You never know. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen, and it happens every tournament. There's always something that comes up. Portugal shouldn't have won the last one. They did. Greece shouldn't have won it years ago. They did.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be something that pops up, and I just love tournaments. I just love watching them. Again, the football geek in me comes out, and I get to sit and watch soccer for 5 hours a day. Kind of good. My wife hates it, but it's kind of good.